What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. Today, I'll be ranking where every single NASCAR Cup Series driver will finish in the NASCAR Cup Series standings in 2025. I'm going to go through all the full-time drivers from 36th position to number 1. So anyways, let's go ahead and just jump straight into it. The driver finishing 36th in the NASCAR Cup Series standings in 2025 is the driver of the 51 car for Rick Ware Racing, Cody Wear. Cody Wear will drive this car full-time in 2025. Now, I think of all the drivers that are running full-time in the NASCAR Cup Series this year, Cody Wear is probably the least talented driver of the field. I think Cody Wear just isn't the best driver out there. I think he's going to struggle most of the year. He did have a really strong run at Daytona in 2024 where he did finish in the top 5. But outside of that, I really did not see much from Cody Wear on the racetrack. And I think Rick Ware is making a major mistake putting Cody behind the wheel full-time in 2025. So sadly, I don't think the pace and speed is really going to be there. And I think it's a pretty big step backwards for the organization heading into 2025. The driver finishing 35th in the NASCAR Cup Series standings in 2025 is a driver of the 10 car for Pollock Racing, Todd Gillan. Todd Gillan in 2024 did not have a good season. With Reddick Racing, he struggled, only picking up 3 or 4 top 10s across a year, which is way worse than Matt Benedetto, who had 11 top 10s in the early portion of the year before he unfortunately got fired near the end of the year in 2023. Todd Gillan also really struggled in the Cup Series in a select starts he ran with Pollock, and while they've got Ty Norris joining the team over the last year or so, I just don't expect much of this number 10 team. They've really struggled. The 31 team with Hemrick had some decent speed last year, but I think Todd Gillan is a worse driver than Daniel Hemrick, so I'm really not expecting much from Ty this year. I think it's going to be a pretty big struggling year for Ty. I think he unfortunately finishes 35th in the NASCAR Cup Series standings. The driver finishing 34th in the NASCAR Cup standings in 2025 is a driver of the 42 car for Legacy Motor Club, John Hunter Nemechek. John Hunter Nemechek had a really disappointing season in 2024. After starting off on a decent note, being in contention for the playoffs after the first 7 or 8 races of the year, he fell off a cliff and had a ton of DNFs in the second half of the season. And I'm really worried about Legacy Motor Club all around heading into 2025. I think that John Hunter's only chance to win will come at super speedways. I don't see pace and speed being there for this organization. Hopefully Legacy can make some improvements, but I'm not expecting that from John Hunter. While I think John Hunter will be a contender in Xfinity races that he runs this year, I don't expect much in the 42, plus Travis Mack's not the best crew chief in the world, so I really don't expect this pairing to do fantastic. I think it's going to be a little bit of struggle for John Hunter as he finishes 34th. The driver finishing 33rd in the NASCAR Cup standings in 2025 is a driver of the 3 car for Richard Childress Racing, Austin Dillon. The last 2 years for Austin Dillon have not been very, very good. He finished like 30th in the points in 2023 with 10 DNS, and in 2024, he ran worse. Sure, he did get that win at Richmond in controversial fashion, but there generally was no pace and speed from the number 3 team through a majority of the year. And while I do think Richard Boswell is a very, very good crew chief, I don't think that Austin Dillon and Richard are going to gel very well together in 2025. So I think that Austin unfortunately ends up struggling quite a bit. It would not surprise or shock me if Austin Dillon retires at the end of this year from full-time racing in the NASCAR Cup Series. I think he's going to struggle a bit and finish in the bottom half of the standings like he has the last 2 years with Richard Childress Racing. The driver finishing 32nd in the NASCAR Cup Series standings in 2025 is a driver of the 43 car for Legacy Motor Club, Erik Jones. It was a really disappointing season for Erik Jones in 2024 after early in the year being a playoff contender, and I predicted early in the year that he would make the playoffs, but there just was no pace and speed in the number 43 team. While I think Erik Jones will have good opportunities to win his super speedways, I think he will be a little bit better than his teammate John Hunter. I'm just not expecting much, unfortunately, from the 43 team. Legacy just showed no pace and speed on the track, and while Erik Jones is a really, really talented driver who, in my opinion, deserves a top quality C, there really isn't one out there. He's signed with the team through 2026. I just don't see Erik Jones going up there contending. I think he will get some top 10s throughout the year and might show some potential at tracks like Darlington and the super speedways because he's a pretty dang good super speedway racer, but I think overall most of the year the pace and speed, they're still going to be behind on that, and I think it's going to be a little bit of struggle for Erik Jones in 2025 with Legacy Motor Club. The driver finishing 31st in the NASCAR Cup Series standings in 2025 is the driver of the 41 car for the Haas factory team, Cole Custer. Cole Custer coming off of having a really solid year in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, making the championship 4. Now, I think Cole Custer all around as a driver is better in 2025 than he was when he was last in Cup in 2022. And yes, they are going to have an RFK Racing Alliance in 2025. However, I think Cole Custer just isn't going to run very, very smoothly throughout the year. I think this team is going to have a lot of growing pains throughout the year, and I think we have to be realistic with our expectations with this team. Now, by the end of the year, I think they're going to be a lot more consistent. I think there's a chance they will have quite a few top 20s throughout the whole entire year. I just don't see Cole Custer going up there or being a playoff threat. I think it's going to take this team a couple years to really gel and get really good. I think Cole Custer finishes in the bottom of standings in 31st this year. The driver finishing 30th in the NASCAR Cup Series standings in 2025 is the driver of the 47 car for Hayek Motorsports, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. in 2024 took a step backwards from his performance in 2023, where he actually was a playoff threat and contender. Now, granted, he did pick up a win at Talladega near the end of the season, but finished in the bottom of the top 30 of the standings. Now, I think it's going to kind of be where this team is at throughout the year. Plus, you have to remember that this team is not going to have the sponsorship that they had when they had Kroger on the team, as Kroger, of course, is going off to work with Ryan Preece and RFK Racing this year. I think Stenhouse's best opportunity to go to victory lane is going to come as super speedways, but outside of that, I think it's going to be a little bit of a struggle. Now, they could catch a bottle and really perform very, very good, but I'm just not really expecting that going into this season for the 47 team. They're going to be focusing on sponsorship, which unfortunately I think is going to affect the pace and speed they have, though I do think Stenhouse will show some potential with this team in 2025. The driver finishing 29th in the NASCAR Cup Series standings in 2025 is the driver to 35 car for 2311 Racing, Riley Herbst. Riley Herbst is coming off of having a really solid year in the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2024, where he ended up scoring 2 victories, including the season finale at Phoenix. And when you're joining a team like 2311 Racing, there's going to be high expectations. We do have to remember, though, this is a team that is expanding next year. And Riley Herbst, while I think he is a solid driver, I don't think he's a top-level driver that I think is really going to go out there and compete for wins, maybe outside of some super speedways, maybe some short tracks as well. I think Riley has definitely gotten better as a race car driver, but I think it's going to be a little bit of a struggle for him at 2311 Racing. I think the super speed program for all around for the team is going to be better, but I think it's going to take some time for Herbst to really gel. I just don't see him really performing like his teammates Bubba Wallace and Tyler Reddick up there. I think it'll be a little bit of a struggle for Riley Herbst in 2025 with the organization of 2311 Racing. The driver finishing 28th in the NASCAR Cup Series standings in 2025 is the driver's 16 car for Pollock Racing, AJ Allmendinger. This is going to be controversial, considering the fact the last time Allmendinger ran full-time, which was 2023, he was a playoff threat throughout the whole entire year and showed a lot of really good pace and speed. My big problem with AJ is, yes, I think he's going to be very fast on road courses, and I think he's going to be super fast on super speedways as well. Here's my issue. Call racing on every other type of track outside of Homestead Miami Speedway. There's just no speed from this number 16 car. SVG struggled in this car at times. AJ really didn't perform that great on the intermediates and ovals, and there just was no pace out of the number 16. Now, with the financial stuff coming in, I think it could definitely help AJ throughout the year, and AJ, I think, will be a sleeper pick to win at road courses in 2025, but I think it's going to be a little bit of struggle for this number 16 team. Plus, they've got a new crew chief, that being Andrew Dickinson, who worked with AJ near the end of the year. I think it's going to be some work to get done, but I think AJ will run okay. I think he'll get some top 10s and maybe occasional top 5, but for most of the year, he's going to be kind of in that middle of the pack range in 2025. The driver finishing 27th in the NASCAR Cup Series standings in 2025 is the driver of the 4 car for Front Row Motorsports, Noah Gragson. I think Noah Gragson, of the 3 drivers in Front Row, is probably going to be the weakest link of this team. Now, Noah Gragson in 2024, he had a really good start to the year. He had 6 or 7 top 10s all around and was inside the contention for the playoffs in the early portion of the year until Suarez Racing went away and this team kind of fell off a cliff. I think Noah Gragson has shown a lot of promise and a lot of potential over the last year or so, and he's going to have a good group to work with, that being the 4 team, which of course was the 10 team from last year. I do think Noah Gragson will get some really good runs throughout the year, and I think he will be kind of close at times to the playoff bubble. But by the end of the year, I think with some teams catching up in some areas, I think it's going to be a little bit of struggle on that front. And I think Noah will show some potential this year on some other tracks, not just super speedways, and maybe Las Vegas, where he ran quite well this past year. But I think it's going to take some time for the number 4 team to really get up there, plus front row is expanding, and this is the expansion car, so I think it will take some time for this 4 team to get up to snuff, but I think we'll have a decent year in 2025. The driver finishing 26th in the NASCAR Cup Series standings in 2025 is a driver 38 car for Front Row Motorsports, Zay Smith. Zay Smith, of course, returning to the team after being gone for a year or so. Now, Zay Smith started off 2024 not in the best way. He struggled, was the worst driver in the full-time points altogether. However, in the second half of 2024, Zay Smith showed a lot of growth, and he showed a lot of potential and got a lot better on the track, to the point where he had like an 18th-place average finish, which is around the same average that Carson OReilly had in the second half of this season. I think Zay Smith's actually going to have a really solid year in 2025, but I think it's going to take some time. Plus, he's going into number 38 team, which is a weaker team than the 34 team as a whole, though Todd Gillan did compete for the top 20 points at times. I do think that Zay Smith's going to show some promise this year. I think he's going to show quite a bit of potential. I don't think he's going to make the playoffs this year, and he could win a super speedway, but I don't see him making the playoffs, but I think he could have a really solid year with Front Row, as he'll be there the next couple years, and I think it's going to be a pretty good year for Zay in 2025. The driver finishing 25th in the NASCAR Cup Series standings in 2025 is a driver of the 21 car for the Wood brothers, Josh Berry. Josh Berry comes in this year replacing Harrison Burton, who's going down to AM Racing to replace Hailie Deegan, who goes off to IndyCar in Indy NXT. Now, Josh Berry, I think, is kind of in the middle of Matt DiBenedetto and Harrison Burton. I think he is going to do better than what Harrison Burton did in 2024 in the last couple of years, despite the fact Harrison did get a win at Daytona. But I don't see Berry doing as good as Matt DiBenedetto did or even Ryan Blaney did. I think Berry's going to have some potential. He's going to have a new crew chief as Miles Stanley takes over for Jeremy Bullins, who's going over to work with RFK Racing this year. I think that Josh Berry's going to have a solid season. I think he will show some potential. I think he's going to be really good on the short tracks. And honestly, was pretty underrated on the super speedway. So I could see this being a pretty solid year for the number 21 team this season. And I think it's going to be the best year the team has had since probably 2018 or 2019, or probably since the time Matt DiBenedetto was behind the wheel. I think it's going to be a better year overall. And I think he will finish in the top 25 in the standings this upcoming season. The driver finishing 24th in the NASCAR Cup Series standings in 2025 is a driver 7 car for Spire Motorsports, Justin Haley. Now, Justin Haley is going to be working with Rodney Childers in 2025, which I think is a big benefit for the program this year. My big worry is the fact that the number 17 was the weakest team of the 3 organizations at Spire Motorsports in 2024. Granted, a lot of that was due in the part of the fact that they had Corey LaJoie behind the wheel and a spotter issue, and there was a lot of crashes that this car was involved in. Now, I do think the 17 will be a lot better. I think for the first time, all 3 Spire cars will be able to finish inside of the top 25 in points. I think Haley's going to have a good year. There was talk of him going to Hendrick, which obviously that's not happening at this point, but I think Justin Haley will show some growth and some potential, and I look for Haley to be good at super speedways, get some top 10s throughout the year, and realistically be a guy who could be in the conversation for the playoffs behind before the end of the year's over. I look for Haley to show some really big growth and potential with this program in the 2025 NASCAR Cup season. The driver finishing 23rd in the NASCAR Cup Series standings in 2025 is a driver 71 car for Spire Motorsports, Michael McDowell. Michael McDowell takes over the 71 car for Zay Smith, who of course departs for Front Row this season. Michael McDowell is going to be joining the 71 team that showed a lot of promise and a lot of potential in the second half of the year, and he's bringing Travis Peterson along from Front Row Motorsports. Now, I think one thing that Spire's been lacking is a veteran driver that can show a lot of potential, and I think that's one thing that Michael McDowell is going to bring to the table. I think McDowell's going to have a solid year. I don't think he's going to do absolutely amazing by any stretch of imagination, but I think he's going to take that 71 car into positions where it really shouldn't be. I think the road course speed will be there for McDowell, and I think he's going to really help the road course program, which I think the road course program did show a lot of potential from Spire in the second half of the season. I think it's going to be a pretty fun year to watch what Michael McDowell can do, as I think McDowell will take that 71 car inside the top 25 in points, but I think he's just going to be in that conversation of making the playoffs, but I don't think he makes the playoffs, sadly, in 2025. The driver finishing 22nd in the NASCAR Cup Series standings in 2025 is a driver of the 2-car for Team Penske, Austin Cindric. Now, Austin Cindric in 2024 had a kind of an interesting year. He won the race at Gateway in the middle of the year and did have some solid runs in the early portion of playoffs and was inside the top 5 in the points early in the year, leading the points after the second or third race of this season. Here's my issue with Cindric. I think he's way behind his teammates currently at the moment right now, and I think there's a lot of pressure on him to really step up. He hasn't really been seeing that potential from him since his rookie season. I think there's a lot of growth we need to see from him going forward, and I'm not sure if Cindric is really going to have that growth we're really looking for heading into 2025. I think he'll be okay at road courses this year, and I think he'll show a lot of really good speed at super speedways, but outside of that, I'm not really sure. Now, if he has speed like he had at the end of 2024, I could see him being a borderline playoff contender. But as of right now and this moment, I don't fully trust the number 22 team. I think Austin will finish in the middle pack and finish 22nd in the standings in 2025. The driver finishing 21st in the NASCAR Cup Series standings in 2025 is a driver in the 99 car for Trackhouse Racing, Daniel Suarez. Now, Daniel Suarez got that win early in the year at Atlanta last year, and he just struggled for most of the year until the beginning of the playoffs. There just wasn't a ton of speed from the 99 team as a whole, though Trackhouse Racing did take a little bit of a step backwards this past year. Now, Daniel Suarez is in a contract year with the organization of Trackhouse Racing, and he really needs to step up to the plate. And I'm going to be honest, I don't expect Daniel Suarez to be really strong in 2025. I think Suarez likely will be in his final year with the team, especially if Connor Zos really does incredible over there at Junior Motorsports. I think there's a very likely chance, especially with them announcing a Chastain and SVG. We're going to be running Xfinity races in the Junior Motorsports 9, and Suarez has not been announced for that. So I think Daniel Suarez very likely could be in his last year. I think it's going to be a little bit of struggle for him at Trackhouse, and I think he finishes in the middle of the pack. I think he's going to have some potential for wins at times this year, but for a lot of the year, I think it's going to be a bit of a struggle, and I think he finishes 21st in 2025. The driver finishing 20th in the NASCAR Cup Series standings in 2025 is a driver 60 car for RFK Racing, Ryan Preece. Ryan Preece will be driving the 3rd car for RFK as they expand to a 3-car operation in 2025, where Derek Finley will also be the crew chief of this car. Now, Ryan Preece has never been in a top-level car since basically being in the Truck Series or the Xfinity Series. This is going to be the first real opportunity that he's had at this point. I don't expect Preece to be as strong as his teammates of Brad Keselowski and Chris Buescher this year, but I think there's going to be times where he's going to be close to them. I think he's going to be a borderline playoff contender this year, and anytime he's been in good equipment, he usually performs. He didn't do really that great at SHR, but SHR was not a top-tier team. Same thing goes, of course, for JTG Doherty, which the Kroger sponsorship came from. I think Ryan Preece will have a solid year. I think he will be in the conversation for the playoffs for the majority of the year. I think there will be times also throughout the year where he will be inside of the playoffs. The question will be, can he sustain it? I think it's going to be a solid year, but I think he does finish in 20th in the points with the RFK Racing organization in 2025. The driver finishing 19th in the NASCAR Cup Series standings in 2025 is a driver 34 car for Front Row Motorsports, Todd Gillan. Going into 2025, I don't think a lot of people are talking about Todd Gillan, and I think he's kind of dangerous going into this year. Number one, Todd Gillan had a really impressive season in 2024, and every single year, Todd Gillan has gotten better and better and better. And he's going to have a new secret weapon joining this team, that being Chris Larson. Chris Larson took that 51 car up to places where it should not have been in 2024, and he's won championships in a Truck Series with Zay Smith back in 2022. I think this is going to be a pairing that's going to surprise a lot of people this year. I look for Todd to be in the conversation for the playoffs throughout the whole entire year and season. I think the number 34 team is going to be quick. He's getting the veteran spot for the reason. I think Todd is going to have a really great year with Front Row Motorsports in 2025. I look for Todd to have a career year in the Cup Series, lead more laps than he's ever led before. I think it's going to be a good year for him in 2025 with Front Row. The driver finishing 18th in the NASCAR Cup Series standings in 2025 is the driver to 77 car for Spire Motorsports, Carson Hocevar. Carson Hocevar last year won the Rookie of the Year honors. when he didn't make mistakes on the track, he was extremely impressive. There were times in 2024 where he was a contender for wins. He could have won Watkins Glen near the end of the year. He was up front at Homestead for a lot of the event, one of the only non-playoff guys to keep up with the playoff guys the whole entire time. And I think he's got so much raw potential and speed. If he can hone in all the craft that he has, I think he could be a future NASCAR Cup Series champion down the road. But I think that Carson is going to have a very, very impressive year where I think he's going to be just borderline of making the playoffs this year. And if he somehow does get a win before the end of 2025, I think he could end up making the playoffs. I think it's very realistic he will pick up his first career NASCAR Cup Series victory. I didn't predict that early in the year, but I do think that Carson OReilly is going to be fast. I think he's going to show a lot of promise and show a lot of really great speed and really great potential. I look for Hocevar to finish inside of the top 20 in the points and be a very surprising candidate to make the playoffs in 2025. The driver finishing 17th in the NASCAR Cup Series standings in 2025 is a driver 22 car for Team Penske, Joey Logano. I think Joey Logano, for the first time since 2017, will miss the NASCAR Cup Series playoffs. Look, Joey Logano, despite the fact that he won the championship in 2024, he did not run very, very good. Logano only had, I think, 6 top 5s and 13 or 14 top 10 finishes across the board. And he's only top 5s in the playoffs were his wins. And let's be real and honest, he had the worst average finish of any driver who's won a championship in the NASCAR Cup Series. I think Logano's going to miss the playoffs. In odd years, Logano isn't that good, and this 22 team has really, really struggled. So I think while Logano's a great driver, and I think he could win a race before the end of the year, I don't see Logano running great. I think he's going to be in the middle pack throughout the whole entire season. I think Joe Logano ends up missing and finishing 17th in the NASCAR Cup standings. The driver finishing 16th in the NASCAR Cup standings in 2025 is a driver with the A-car for Richard Childress Racing, Kyle Busch. Now, Kyle Busch, unfortunately, in 2024, failed to win a race in a season for the first time in his NASCAR Cup career after winning in 19 straight seasons. I don't see that continuing the streak of him losing races. I think Kyle Busch will be able to go back to victory lane in 2025. However, I think Kyle Busch is going to struggle quite a bit, as I think RCR is still going to be a little bit down in performance. I think this also will likely be his last year with RCR, as I think he could leave the team at the end of this year. I think Kyle Busch will show some more speed than he had done in 24, and there was a lot of speed from that number 18 this past year. They just had a lot of terrible luck and a lot of bad luck that came the organization's way. I think Kyle Busch will likely win the Daytona 500 this year, gets one win, might leave the team at the end of the season, but I do think Kyle Busch will make the playoffs this year and finish 16th in the points in 2025. The driver finishing 15th in the NASCAR Cup standings in 2025 is a driver of the 88 car for Trackhouse Racing, Shane Van Gisbergen. Shane Van Gisbergen being in the top 15 is certainly going to be bold, considering the fact he's going full-time for the first time and will be going for the Rookie of the Year honors this year. However, I think Shane Van Gisbergen is going to adapt to this next-gen car very quickly. Near the end of 2024, he was starting to figure it out on ovals. He was finishing the top 10 and top 15 very consistently in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. And in Cup, he also got a top 15 finish at Martinsville. Plus, you have to remember there's going to be 6 or 7 road courses this year, and we know Shane is going to be super strong on the road courses, which I think is going to really help him this season. I think SVG will finish inside of the top 15 in points. I don't think he makes it past the round of 16 this year if they continue the playoff system that they have. I think it's going to be a pretty good year for the number 88 team. Shane has shown a lot of promise. He's also competing in the Rolex this week, which is exciting. But I think that Shane Van Gisbergen will have a really solid year for a rookie, and I think he will win the Rookie of the Year honors, and I also think he will get a couple victories in the NASCAR Cup Series standings in 2025. The driver finishing 14th in the NASCAR Cup standings in 2025 is the driver of the 54 car for Joe Gibbs Racing, Ty Gibbs. Ty Gibbs, the last couple years, has come close to winning races, but is still looking for that first career NASCAR Cup Series win, and he's approaching that 100th career NASCAR Cup start very, very quickly, and will reach it in the middle of this season. Now, Ty Gibbs started 2024 off on a really strong note, leading the most laps early in the year, and was the points leader at one point early in the season. However, the 54 team just fell off of a cliff in the second half of the season. I think this team is going to improve a little bit. I think they will make the playoffs in 2025. I don't expect the struggles at the end of the year to continue this season, but I think that Ty Gibbs will get that win, but I think it's still going to take some time for Ty to really kind of step up to that next big level. I think it's going to be a good year. There's no question on that, but I think it takes time for him to really go to that next step, though I do think he will get that first win, and he may get a couple wins, you never know, but I think he will improve from 2024 and run a little better this year. The driver finishing 13th in the NASCAR Cup standings in 2025 is a driver in the 19 car for Joe Gibbs Racing, Chase Brisco. Chase Brisco replaces Martin Truex Jr., who of course will only run part-time in Cup with Tricon Garage at this year's Daytona 500. I think Brisco is going to surprise a lot of people this year. He has never been in a top-level car in the NASCAR Cup Series, and when he was in a top-level car in Xfinity competition, he flourished and delivered. Now, the biggest worry for me is going to be James Small. I think that Chase Brisco isn't a problem at this team going year. I think it's definitely going to be James Small. Now, I do think that Chase Brisco will win a couple races this year, and I think the number 19 team is going to show a lot of promise and a lot of potential. I think he makes the playoffs this year, though I don't think he really makes it out of the round of 16, but I think he gets a couple wins. I think he will be a borderline championship threat and championship contender. I look for this number 19 team to show a lot of promise and potential, as I think he will finish inside of the top 15 in standings in 2025 at JGR. The driver finishing 12th in the NASCAR Cup standings in 2025 is the driver of the 23 car for 2311 Racing, Bubba Wallace. Bubba Wallace in 2024 had a career year. He had 6 top 5s and 14 top 10s. Despite that, Bubba Wallace did not make the playoffs, despite the fact his teammate did win the regular season championship. But I think Bubba's due for a bounce-back year. Now, he's going to have a new crew chief this year as Booty Barker's moving into more of a competition role in the program, and you've got Charles Denny coming over, who was Christian Eckes' crew chief. I think Denny is a really good crew chief, and I think he's going to put Bubba Wallace in a lot of pressure on him to really do good, and I think Bubba is going to have a career year. I think he will go back to victory lane for the first time since 2022, and I can realistically see Bubba Wallace picking up multiple victories this year. If the 23 team has the speed that they had at times, and they can keep up on the track and keep the pace that they had, I don't think there's any doubt in my mind then that Bubba Wallace can have a really great year. So I think 2025 is going to be fun. I think he will have a career year in Cup and finish 12th overall in the standings. The driver finishing 11th in the NASCAR Cup standings in 2025 is the driver 17 car for RFK Racing, Chris Buescher. Chris Buescher in 2024 had a season overshadowed. He had a really good season. Not as good as 2023, but he got a win and was actually one of the best average finishes in the field last year. However, he missed the playoffs. There were so many drivers below him that went to victory lane that probably should not have been in the playoffs over Chris. I think Buescher's due for a bounce-back season. I think Buescher will make the playoffs this year. I think the 17th team is going to show a lot of potential. Maybe there'll be a little bit less speed because of the fact they've expanded to 3 cars for the year. But I really think that Chris Buescher is going to have a strong season with the RFK Racing team. I think the 17th team is going to do some really great things this year. And I think that we will see Chris Buescher be a contender for the top 10 in points overall. I think the number 17 team comes back with a vengeance, gets back into playoffs, and I think Buescher will go to victory lane and maybe get a couple victories for the end of the year, but I think he finishes 11th in the NASCAR Cup standings. The driver finishing 10th in the NASCAR Cup standings in 2025 is the driver to 6 car for RFK Racing, Brad Keselowski. I think for the first time, Brad Keselowski is going to be the strongest RFK Racing machine. I think Brad Keselowski has got a secret weapon coming this year, and that is going to be Jeremy Bullins. Jeremy Bullins and Brad, when they work together, these two gel together so well at Team Penske. Brad in 2020 picked up 4 victories and made it to the championship 4. In 2021, while he only got 1 victory, he made it to the round of 8 and just missed out barely of making it to the championship 4. I think Brad and Jeremy are going to have a good year together. I think it's going to be very fun to see what this number 6 team is going to be able to accomplish, and I think Brad Keselowski is going to be up to it and up to the challenge to continue getting better as a driver, and I think Brad will go back to victory lane again like he did in 2024, continue winning more races as he continues to cement his legacy in the sport. And I think he's also got a really great chance and opportunity to get his first Daytona 500 win, which he's due for at this point. He's got an opportunity to definitely do that in 2025. The driver finishing 9th in the NASCAR Cup standings in 2025 is a driver of the 11 car for Joe Gibbs Racing, Denny Hamlin. I think this point, 2025, is going to be the year we're going to see Denny Hamlin start taking a little bit of a step backwards. Number one, big sponsors like FedEx and Mavis Tire, it seems like they're no longer with Denny Hamlin currently at the moment. Number two, Denny Hamlin will not have Chris Gabehart as a crew chief. Instead, he's going to have Ty Gibbs' former crew chief, Chris Gale, as the crew chief this season. Plus, Denny Hamlin will be 45 years old by the end of 2025, and I think performance is going to start declining for him in the NASCAR Cup Series. I just don't see Denny Hamlin really stepping up and being a championship contender. I think last year and a couple years ago was his best chance and opportunity. Plus, JGR did take a little bit of a step backwards in performance in the second half of the year, and they didn't win a race after New Hampshire. But I think Hamlin does get some wins this year, maybe only one, but I don't see Hamlin being a championship threat this year in 2025. The driver finishing 8th in the NASCAR Cup standings in 2025 is the driver of the 48 car for Hendrick Motorsports, Alex Bowman. Alex Bowman is going into this year as one of the more underrated drivers in Cup. I think Alex Bowman is going to surprise a lot of people, and I think he's going to be an underdog for the championship, and I think he will be in contention for the regular season championship this year. Bowman at the end of the year was very quick, had one of the best average finishes in the field, taking away what happened at the Charlotte Roval, sadly. I think that this number 48 team, its combination, was really putting it together in the second half of the year. I think Alex Bowman is going to have a very good season. I think Bowman will go back to victory like he did in 2024. I don't see him winning like a ton of races, but I think he's going to kill him with consistency throughout 2025, and I think he could be a borderline contender to maybe make the championship four. I think it's still going to be a very solid year for the number 48 team in 2025. I think it's going to be a strong year for this team. The driver finishing 7th in the NASCAR Cup standings in 2025 is the driver of the one car for Trackhouse Racing, Ross Chastain. Ross Chastain, for the first time since 2021, ended up missing the playoffs. However, Ross Chastain really had the pace to make the playoffs this past year, but wasn't a championship threat. But I think this year he's going to come back with a vengeance. Ross Chastain, near the end of the year, they started putting together a lot of consistency, and I think this one team really turned the corner and really turned it around. And I do think that this year you're going to see Ross Chastain be a major factor to get it done. I think he will contend for a couple victories this year, and I think Trackhouse is going to be a little bit stronger than they were in 2024. I look for Ross Chastain to definitely make the playoffs this year and be a borderline playoff contender and championship contender as well. I really like the speed the one team showed, like I said, at the end of the year, and I really look for Ross Chastain and the number one team to be up front a lot more consistently. I think Ross Chastain will be up there, and I think he will finish inside of the top 7 in points in 2025 with Trackhouse Racing. The driver finishing 6th in the NASCAR Cup standings in 2025 is the driver of the 24 car for Hendrick Motorsports, William Byron. Now, William Byron in 2024 had a very similar season to what he had in 2021 in 2022. He started the year off blazing fire, 3 wins in the first 9 races. Then he kind of cooled off in the summer and pulled off a really strong second half of the year where he did make the championship 4. I think Byron is going to win a few races this year, and I think he will be a championship contender. However, I don't think he makes the Final 4 this year, unlike what he did in 2024 and 2023. I think Byron will have a couple wins. I think he will be in the conversation throughout the year, and I did like the speed that William Byron showed at the end of the year. However, I think it's going to be a little bit of time before he gets back to the championship 4 again. I think he does get a couple wins this year, but I think he will be in that conversation, but I just don't think he'll have enough. I think for 2025, he will finish in the top 6 in the points, finishing in 6th. He will be in the round of 8 probably this upcoming year, but I think unlike 2024, he will not make the championship 4 in 2025. The driver finishing 5th in the NASCAR Cup standings in 2025 is a driver of the 45 car for 2311 Racing, Tyler Reddick. Tyler Reddick in 2024 had a very impressive year. Won the regular season championship with 2311 Racing. Picked up 3 wins, including a very impressive last lap pass at Homestead Miami Speedway. Now, unlike 2024, I think Tyler Reddick is just going to miss out on the championship 4. I think he will be a contender for the regular season championship in 2025. I think he will win a couple races this year. However, I think he just barely misses out. I think the loss is going to be kind of a big distraction for him going into the year, and I think it will affect him a little bit going into this season. But I do think Reddick will be fast. I think he's just barely going to miss out on the championship 4. I think he's going to have a very similar season to what he had in 2023. So I think it's going to be a good year for Tyler Reddick. I just don't think he does enough to make the Final 4, but I think it'll be a pretty fun and great year, as Reddick, I think, will finish 5th in the NASCAR Cup standings in 2025. The driver finishing 4th in the NASCAR Cup standings in 2025 is the driver in the 9 car for Hendrick Motorsports, Chase Elliott. Going into this year, Chase Elliott is riding off a ton of momentum. In the final few races of the year, Chase Elliott was contending for victories. He led a ton of laps at Homestead, led a ton of laps at Phoenix. He also led a ton of laps at Vegas and was up there, well, not a ton of laps at Vegas, but led a lot of laps at Homestead, led a lot of laps at Martinsville, and was the most consistent driver in the NASCAR Cup Series. I think Chase Elliott's going to get back to winning a lot more races and continuing that really strong consistency. I think he will make the Final 4 this year. I think Elliott gets back there this time around. He just barely missed out on it in 2024, and I think he will get it done this year. I think the 9 team is stronger now at this point. They've got big partnership sponsorship from Amazon Prime, which I think is really going to help a little bit with the sponsorship coming in, and I think that Chase Elliott has a really great year. I look for the speed to be there for the number 9 team, and I think that Chase Elliott will be pretty quick, show some really great pace and really strong speed. I think he finishes in the top 5 and gets a 4th place finish, just misses out on getting the championship done, but I think he finishes in the top 5, in 4th in the standings in 2025. The driver finishing 3rd in the NASCAR Cup standings in 2025 is the driver of the 20 car for Joe Gibbs Racing, Christopher Bell. Christopher Bell in 2024 was one of the fastest cars on the racetrack and honestly kind of got screwed of making the championship 4, despite the fact, in my opinion, he was the best driver in the class on the average finish, led a ton of laps, and kind of got screwed out of a couple wins at the end of the year. I think Christopher Bell and the 20 team are going to be coming back with a vengeance. I think he is going to be the strongest Joe Gibbs Racing driver like he's really been the last couple of years. And I think Christopher Bell is going to win a couple races and make it back to Phoenix. And you never know, he could have the speed to get the championship done. However, there's a big reason why I'm not picking him to win the championship currently at the moment. I think Bell is going to be very, very fast, and I think the speed from the number 20 team is really going to be there this season. I think he just misses out on getting the championship done, but I think unlike 2024, where he missed the championship 4, I think the number 20 team will have the pace to get it done, and I think he will be able to make it to the Final 4, as I think they're going to have a good redemption season over at the team in 2025, as I think he will get back to the Final 4. The driver finishing 2nd in the NASCAR Cup standings in 2025 is the driver of the 5 car for Hendrick Motorsports, Kyle Larson. Now, the last couple years, I've picked Kyle Larson to win the championship and be number 1. I think Larson is overall going to be the fastest car all year in 2025, but I think he is going to finish 2nd. And while I do think Hendrick's program at Phoenix is going to be a lot better, I just think he misses out on beating the guy who I'm picking to win the championship currently at the moment. Kyle Larson is going to be very dangerous this year. He won the most races last year, picked up 6 wins. Cliff Daniels and Kyle have been able to have really good speed. Larson also has a really good chance and opportunity to reach 10,000 laps all-time on the lap sled counter, which is super impressive. He can get that done. He's also looking for his 3rd straight year of leading 1,000 laps in a season, which not many drivers have done that in recent years. So I think Kyle Larson will be the fastest car on the track. I just think he won't have the pace and speed to go out there and win the championship. He will be in the Final 4, but I think Larson will just miss out on winning the championship as he finished 2nd in the NASCAR Cup standings. That means that the driver finishing 1st in the standings in 2025 is the driver of the 12 car for Team Penske, Ryan Blaney. Ryan Blaney, I think, is going to have a career year in the NASCAR Cup Series with the number 12 team. Ryan Blaney in 2024 got 3 wins. However, the last 2 years in 23 and 24, while he's made the Final 4, there's been some issues on the consistency. I think that's going to get improved in 2025 for Ryan Blaney. I also think Ryan Blaney is going to have a 4-win season in 2025, and I think because Phoenix is the championship race, I think that's where the big thing comes in for Ryan Blaney, because I don't think they're getting rid of the championship race at this point. So I think Ryan Blaney will be your champion at the end of the day, and I think he finishes number 1. I think he's going to have a career year in Cup. I think he will be one of the most consistent. I think he will contend for the regular season title, and I think the number 12 team will get it done this year, as Ryan Blaney will get his 2nd championship in the last 3 years, and get Team Penske their 4th straight championship, which would be super impressive. The last time a team won 4 in a row was when, of course, Hendrick had domination, when Jimmy Johnson won 5 in a row. I think Ryan Blaney will be the guy at the end of the day winning the 2025 NASCAR Cup Series Championship. So, that is going to be it for the driver rankings headed into 2025. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel. Notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Let's go to below that and comment your thoughts below on today's episode. What are your driver rankings heading into 2025? Let me know them in the comments below. Tomorrow on the channel, there's enough NASCAR news. We'll do a news video talking about all the news over the course of the last couple days. If not, we'll have the top 10 anticipated races heading into 2025 dropping. We will have video on every NASCAR silly season move from 2024 to 2025. We'll be talking about people like Carl Edwards, Kyle Busch, Kurt Busch, Haley Deegan, Connor Zillis Jr. Motorsports, with them entering the Daytona 500. Chandler Smith, Eric Almirola, Sam Mayer, Sheldon Creed, Carson Quaffle, other big names like Lane Riggs, you name it. We'll be talking about all those big name drivers. Cletus McFarland too, and also Frankie Muniz and Matt DiBenedetto. Got a lot of great content dropping as we get back to racing season as it kicks off this week. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.